Before we begin, a quick thank you to Gunfire Games for sponsoring this video and providing me with a free game key. Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. At least 5 times a day, I get challenge run requests in the comments section. Doesn't matter which video, doesn't matter what the topic is, you all just love to suggest ideas for my inevitable future suffering. And you know what? I appreciate that. I get suggestions for all kinds of games, many of which I've never heard before. One suggestion that keeps popping up, however, is for a game series that I've not only heard of, but have completed in my off time. Remnant from the Ashes, a game that's been touted as Dark Souls, but with guns, which is actually pretty close to the truth, at least in some respects. And while I have yet to complete an actual challenge run for Remnant, I can say without a doubt that the flamethrower weapon in that game, the Spitfire, can in fact beat the entire game if you make a build around it. Not sure if I'll ever make a video about that, but hey, you've little faith. However, for those of you who weren't aware, Remnant 2 was announced back in December of 2022, and will be released very soon if it's not released already by the time this video comes out. And from what I understand, everyone is pretty dang excited about it. So when Gunfire Games reached out to me themselves to give me a game key so I could give my first impressions, I was pretty quick to say yes. Gotta represent the Firebomb Goddess after all. So without further ado, welcome ladies and gentlemen to Remnant 2. First things first, let's get the important context stuff out of the way. Remnant 2 is the sequel to Remnant from the Ashes, both in number and in story. It's been developed by Gunfire Games, published by Gearbox Publishing, and releases on Steam and Epic Game Store, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S on July 25th. Just like the first game, you can play both solo or with 2 other friends, cooperating against enemy forces as you shoot and slash your way through the game. There hasn't been any mention of crossplay in any of the marketing, and since I was playing the game early, I wasn't able to try out any of the multiplayer functionality. So if you want more information on that, make sure to do your research and look up a few other articles or videos about the game. I'm sure someone will cover it in depth. The game is being sold for the same price across all platforms, so there's no price discrimination there. It's $50 for the base game, $60 for the deluxe edition, and $70 for the ultimate edition. There's only a few differences between the different versions. Deluxe Edition gets you 3 armor sets from the first game earlier on in the story, while the Ultimate Edition gets you 3 days early access, which is probably already moot by the time this video uploads, a survival pack, which contains some free crafting materials and consumable items, and guaranteed access to the 3 unannounced DLC packs that'll be coming to Remnant 2, quote, within 1 year of launch, end quote. Personally, I'd just go with the base game, since I have no interest in power leveling and getting to the end of the game as fast as possible, and because paying for any form of content that doesn't exist yet is a practice that I refuse to support. But if you want the option, it's there. So, with all the numbers and data out of the way, let's get to the part that you all actually care about, the game itself. For context, I played this game on its highest settings through Steam with a keyboard and mouse. The game does have controller support for the PC if you want it, so that's good. But I'm a KB plus M kind of guy when it comes to shooters. And while I'm not super familiar with the genre, I'd like to think I know my way around the block. The first thing you'll notice is that the game looks very pretty. The aesthetic theme of the first game is still here, just updated a bit since 2019. And you know what? I like it. Remnant doesn't try to go for cutting-edge realism, just graphical fidelity. And I think this works in Remnant's favor. After all, we're shooting down monsters and interdimensional beings. Realism isn't exactly what they're aiming for. Just like the first game, you'll be visiting several different locales, each one as beautiful and foreboding as the last. But unlike the first game, each location feels a bit more lived in, or at the very least, feels more alive. Animals walk around the map, the clutter in each room gives them a feeling of being used by its inhabitants, and overall, each section of the map feels like it has a bit more purpose. There are still a few dead ends with a single small piece of loot, or sometimes nothing at all, but I found myself wondering, wait, why does this room exist? A lot less than the first game. But it doesn't feel overly stuffed full of visual clutter either, and I never found myself overwhelmed by too many stimuli while playing. Bloodborne. The background music of each area is extremely fitting as well. Whether you're casually strolling through a labyrinthian maze, or in the middle of combat, the music fades and swells smoothly behind you. And it's good stuff too. I mean, here, listen to this. Full marks for atmosphere and immersion, Remnant 2. Well done. Moving on, let's talk about the mechanics. Remnant 2 is very similar to the first game as far as the gameplay loop goes. Enter a world, kill the things, get the loot, repeat ad nauseum. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. In that same vein, the combat mechanics are the same as well. You'll get a primary, secondary, and melee weapon, all of which you'll be able to upgrade with crafting materials that you find in each world. You can also craft boss weapons, which come in the previously mentioned 3 flavors of weapon type, and are usually very, very good. On top of this, you'll be making and or finding mods for your guns, which give your character special rechargeable skills to use in combat. Trying to cover the range of abilities would be futile, due to the sheer variety. You've got healing grenades, spike traps, incendiary rounds, special boss skills, the list goes on. If there's a build you have in mind, chances are you can probably make it. And you'll also acquire mods and skills that affect the way your healing item works, the Dragon Heart. This isn't a new idea from the first game. You've always been able to change how your Dragon Heart works, depending on what armor, rings, and amulets you wear. But now you've got more slots to fill, and more build variety to work with. And as far as I can tell, these bonuses are always active, so you don't have to actively use your Dragon Heart to get the buffs you're equipping, which is really nice. And if for some reason a simple healing heart isn't for you, there's now several hearts you can find throughout the worlds that might fit your build better, each with their own special effects. There's plenty of other things you'll want to fiddle around with, rings, amulets, armor, the usual misfits. And combined with the fact that the character creator is decently fleshed out, players should have no trouble making the character they want to make. Speaking of characters, let's talk about the NPCs and dialogue. Remnant 2 has plenty of interesting NPCs all about the place, some of which are callbacks from the previous game, and others who are completely new. The voice acting is very well done, doesn't get in the way of the game, and fits the vibe the game is trying to set perfectly, jumping between serious lore and, well, this guy.
Whoa, hey, get away from my stew! Oh, it's you.
The dialogue itself is very well done, both in quality and quantity, and gives players the option to either deep dive the lore and ask all the questions you could ever want, or just skip right to the shooting stuff part. Whatever suits your fancy. Speaking of, let's talk about the combat. It's good. Moving on. Okay, I'll elaborate. Combat feels about the same as the first game, but that's not an insult. Shooting animations and melee attacks all feel right and have a proper weightiness to them. Enemy attacks are the same way, and overall the combat experience feels well tuned. Melee combat isn't quite as finely tuned as the shooting, what with your character doing some sort of quasi-lock-on when swinging their weapon, but it's nothing worth complaining about. The combat scenarios themselves are also very well done. There's plenty of enemy variety, ranging from robotic sentries, to giant bugs, to sentient rocks, to a few callbacks from the previous game. Each enemy has their own attacks and patterns, and whenever you accidentally overextend and find yourself in the middle of a swarm of enemies, you really feel the pressure of having to prioritize targets and make snap decisions. Oh, and the bosses. Don't forget the bosses. You've got your mini-bosses, which are essentially just harder enemies who drop a few of the rare crafting materials and occasionally a unique drop of some kind, and you've got the bosses of the worlds themselves. The number of bosses you can fight in this game is actually pretty staggering, at least more than I was expecting anyhow, and each one is different from the last. You could be pedantic and point out that you just have to shoot them until they die, which is factually not untrue, but that'd be doing Remnant 2 a disservice. I mean, look at this. Tell me this doesn't look and feel cool. I also enjoyed the way the game made puzzles out of its bosses. Whether it's a boss that hides inside its minions and quickly becomes horde mode if you aren't paying attention, to a boss that is quite literally a puzzle room that requires positioning and problem solving to complete. Oh god, wait, I'm too young to die! Oh, well, how about that? False alarm, everyone. I'm okay. Overall, I'm very happy with the way Remnant 2 treats its world building. Between the world itself and the people, enemies, and lore within it, it's easy to see how you could fall into this game for hours on end. And with that in mind, let's talk about replayability. Firstly, there's several character classes to choose from. You've got the Medic class, which is great at keeping you and your friends alive and boasts extreme survivability. The Hunter, which excels at long range and high damage gameplay, and can even enter a stealth mode of sorts to ambush enemies for even more damage. The Challenger, for those of us that hate aiming and prefer to see the whites of our enemies' eyes. The Handler, which— Dog! Holy f***, there's a dog! Can you pet the dog? You can pet the dog. But it doesn't look like you can name it though, which is probably a good thing, because while picking the Handler class gives you a companion who can pull their weight in a fight and actively save you if you go down, it also gives you crippling anxiety about how safe your dog is. Giving it a name would probably just make it worse. Please God, take me instead! He's a good boy, take me instead! And lastly, you've got the Gunslinger, who's all about damage, instant reloads, and constant shooting. So yeah, something for everyone. If you're like me and have trouble picking a class, I've got 2 bits of good news. Later in the game, you'll be able to multi-class for even greater build variety, and if you find yourself disliking the first class you chose, starting a new character gives you the option to jump right into the action, skipping the first hour or so of the story and getting right to the shooting. 2 thumbs up for that one, Remnant. Fantastic choice. As for gameplay loop replayability, like I said earlier, it's much the same as the first game. You'll play through the story, but you can also re-enter worlds in adventure mode once you complete a world, and you can re-roll each piece of the story or adventure over and over again as many times as you see fit. It's my understanding that there's a level of procedural generation going on here, again, just like the first game, so if you liked the way this was done in Remnant 1, you're going to enjoy Remnant 2. So, with all that said, would I recommend Remnant 2? I think it depends. There's no doubt in my mind that Remnant 2 is a solid game. The atmosphere is fantastic, the mechanics are sound, and the replayability is definitely high due to the quantity of options the game gives its players. It's not perfect. You'll see the occasional visual glitch from time to time that can take you out of the experience, and I had 1 or 2 sound glitches occur in my 6+ hours of playing, where the music just kinda stopped for a second before starting up again. But there's nothing here that I would actively warn you against. This is just video games being video games, and it was so infrequent that I only noticed it because of how airtight the rest of the game was. No, the only reason I'm hesitant to outright recommend the game is because of one thing I've said over and over throughout this video. It's like Remnant 1, which again is not an insult. Remnant 1 was a great game and a high performer, and is beloved by many. But as someone who likes to see a series grow and try new things, Remnant 2 doesn't really take any risks in that regard. There's a few new mechanics here and there, and the size of the game is certainly larger, both in scope and quantity of content, but that's about it. If you told me this was a massive DLC expansion for Remnant 1, with improved graphics, a few extra mechanics, and quality of life improvements, I would have believed you. But while that's a negative for me, this could be exactly what the Traveler ordered for others. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people complain about how they bought the sequel of a game because they wanted more of the first game, and got all upset when the sequel took the series in a different direction. Personally, I prefer innovation to stagnation, but that's just me. If anything, Remnant 2 will be a great test case to see if people do, in fact, want more of the same, or if they just think they do. So there you have it, Remnant 2. A high-quality game with tight mechanics, excellent gameplay, and high replayability. I'd say it's well worth your money. Just so long as you don't mind having more of the same. Thanks again to Gunfire Games for sponsoring this video and letting me try out their game ahead of schedule. If you're interested in trying out the game for yourself, you can use my link in the description below to let them know I sent you. But other than that, that's all I've got. Take care of yourselves, be good to one another, and I'll see you all again soon.